All right, today we're going to dig into a devotional called Divine Deliverance from Poverty. What's fascinating about it is the journey it takes you on from a very personal problem to being part of a huge global mission. So let's dive right in.
So the whole thing really kicks off with this one single verse from Philippians. You got to understand, this is the bedrock, the foundational promise that everything else is built on. This idea that God will provide.
Okay, here's how we're going to tackle this. We'll start with how they define poverty itself, then look at the promise of provision, the specific call to action, the prayers they provide, and finally, how it all funnels into joining a global community.
All right, first things first. What exactly is the problem this devotional is trying to solve? Let's look at how they define it.
And right off the bat, you can see how they frame poverty. It's not just about, not having enough money. They define it as any condition, physical, emotional, or even spiritual, that gets in the way of you living the life you are meant to live. By setting it up this way, a spiritual solution starts to make a whole lot of sense.
Okay, so if the problem is spiritual, well, what's the spiritual solution? That's what brings us to part 2, the whole theological framework behind it. The answer, according to the text, is kind of this mix of faith and practical steps. It's about trusting that God will provide, for sure, but it's also about asking for wisdom in how you handle what you have. They talk a lot about these principles of sowing and reaping, which basically means what you put out into the world is what you get back. It's a real blend of faith and responsibility. And that leads us right into the how-to part, moving from ideas to actual practice with the call to action. So they lay out these 4 clear steps. And what's really interesting here is the shift. The first 3 steps, they're all about your mindset, right? Trust, seek, believe, that's all internal. But then, bam, that 4th step makes it physical, give. This is that whole sowing and reaping idea put into practice, turning what you believe inside into something you do on the outside.
Now, to help people actually do this, the devotional gives them some specific tools. And that's where the prayers come in. And this is a really crucial turning point. You've got the prayer for provision, which is what you'd expect, right? It's about your needs. But then, right alongside it, there's a prayer of salvation, a full-on conversion prayer. This is a moment the whole focus shifts from a material problem to a much bigger spiritual commitment. It's a key step in this whole journey.
And of course, right after that big commitment, what happens next? There's an offer, a free ebook. It's the perfect follow-up to guide someone who's just made that decision, giving the material to really cement that new connection.
So you see this journey happening, right? From a personal belief to connecting with a community. And that brings us perfectly to our final section, building a sense of belonging on a global scale. And wow, this is where things just explode in scale. Suddenly, it's not just about your personal deliverance anymore. The focus zooms way out to this massive mission, Operation 500 Million Souls for Christ. The reader is now being invited to be a part of something way, way bigger than themselves. So, you might be asking, how do you get involved? Well, they give you 3 clear options. You can be a prayer partner, a volunteer missionary, or what they call a kingdom investor, which means providing financial support. Each one offers a different way to plug into the mission. And you better believe they're using every tool in the digital toolbox to keep this community connected. We're talking WhatsApp, Telegram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, the whole shebang. It's a full-on digital ecosystem built to keep people engaged.
And this right here really paints a picture of just how global this whole thing is. Look at this schedule, synchronized prayer times across totally different time zones. We're talking Nigeria, the US, the UK, India. It's this incredibly coordinated effort to build a single, unified community that's praying around the clock.
So when you step back and look at it, we've gone on this incredible journey. We started with just one Bible verse about personal needs and ended up with a highly organized global mission. It shows a clear pathway, taking someone from a personal, material problem and connecting them to a massive, worldwide spiritual cause. And that leaves us with one big question to chew on. How do spiritual messages about prosperity become so effective at building these powerful global communities? Thanks for joining this Explainer.